You see, love doesn't always shout. Sometimes love whispers. Sometimes love hides behind walls built from old pain, broken trust, and years of learning that vulnerability equals danger. And when you encounter someone who carries an avoidant heart, you're not dealing with someone who lacks love. You're dealing with someone who learned long ago that love could hurt. So they built armor. They built distance. They built silence. But here's the truth. Most people never understand. When an avoidant keeps returning to you, when they circle back again and again despite their fears, despite their instinct to run, that is not weakness. That is devotion battling fear. Think about it. The human mind moves toward pleasure and away from pain. That is one of the deepest principles of human behavior. An avoidant has wired their nervous system to escape closeness because closeness once meant pain. Yet somehow, despite that programming, they stay connected to you. That means something powerful is happening. It means your presence feels safer than their fear. It means your energy is stronger than their past. And that is no small thing. When an avoidant loves deeply, it doesn't always look like fireworks and poetry. Often it looks like quiet loyalty. It looks like them checking in when they could disappear. It looks like them staying in your orbit even when intimacy terrifies them. And when they begin letting you see the hidden rooms of their soul, the insecurities, the childhood wounds, the doubts they never speak about, that is sacred territory. Because avoidant hearts don't open easily. They open carefully, slowly, deliberately. And when they choose you to witness that inner world, you're not just another chapter in their story. You're becoming part of their healing. Understand something profound about love. Real love is not measured by perfection. It is measured by transformation. If someone begins confronting their fears because they don't want to lose you, if they begin challenging their patterns because your connection matters, if they start choosing closeness, even when every instinct tells them to retreat, that is not casual affection. That is a soul fighting for connection. And here is the deeper truth most people miss. The avoidant who truly loves you does not want temporary comfort. They want permanence. But permanence scares them because it requires surrender. Surrender of control, surrender of walls, surrender of the identity that says, I must protect myself at all costs. Yet love, real love, is the force that melts those defenses. So when an avoidance stays in your life, when they keep finding their way back, when they slowly lower the shields they spent years building, you are witnessing one of the most courageous acts a human being can make. Choosing love over fear, and that choice repeated over time is what creates forever. Not dramatic promises, not perfect behavior, but the decision again and again to move toward the person who feels like home. That is the moment when love stops being a feeling and becomes a commitment of the soul. When you truly understand human behavior, you begin to realize something powerful. Intensity is easy, but consistency is rare. Anyone can show up with passion in a moment of excitement. Anyone can create a spark of connection when emotions are high. But real love, deep love, is not built in moments of intensity. It is built in patterns of presence. For someone with an avoidant heart, emotional intensity can actually feel overwhelming. Their nervous system often interprets strong emotional closeness as a threat rather than comfort. This doesn't mean they don't feel deeply. In fact, many avoidant individuals feel emotions very strongly, but they've learned to regulate those emotions by creating distance. Distance becomes their safety mechanism. So when you look at their behavior, you cannot judge their love by dramatic expressions or grand declarations. Their love shows up differently. It reveals itself in the quiet pattern of staying in your life. Consistency becomes the language of their heart. Think about the psychology behind it. An avoidant person's instinct is to protect themselves from vulnerability. Their mind constantly scans for situations where they might feel trapped, overwhelmed, or emotionally exposed. When those feelings arise, their natural reaction is to step back, pull away, or create space. Yet when someone truly matters to them, something extraordinary begins to happen. Even though their instinct tells them to withdraw completely, they don't disappear. They remain connected. They still check in. They still find ways to be present. They still maintain the bond. That quiet return, that steady presence, tells you something deeper than words ever could, because it means they are choosing connection over their own defense mechanisms. This is not something casual. It takes enormous emotional effort for someone who fears closeness to keep showing up for it. And that's why consistency is such a powerful indicator of love in an avoidant personality. It's not about how intensely they express affection in a single moment. It's about whether they continue to invest their energy in the relationship over time. You may notice that their care often appears in subtle ways. They remember things about you. They offer help when you need it. They show concern for your well-being. They make space for you in their life, even when emotional expression feels uncomfortable. These actions might seem small on the surface, but psychologically they represent something much deeper. Every consistent act is a quiet decision to keep you close. In many ways, their consistency is an act of courage, because every time they remain present, they are stepping slightly outside the emotional walls they built to protect themselves. Every time they maintain contact, they are allowing a little more vulnerability into their world. And over time, those small, consistent choices begin to reshape their emotional patterns. That is how real connection grows with an avoidant individual, not through pressure, not through emotional intensity, but through steady presence, through reliability, through the quiet rhythm of showing up again and again. And when someone who naturally values distance teens to make room for you in their life, day after day, interaction after interaction, it reveals something profound. It means your presence has become safe. It means your connection has become meaningful. And most importantly, it means that despite their fears, their heart keeps choosing you. One of the most misunderstood patterns in relationships with an avoidant person is the cycle of distance and return. Many people see the distance and immediately assume it means the connection is fading. They think the withdrawal is proof of indifference. But when you understand the emotional wiring of an avoidant individual, you begin to see something very different. The true message is often revealed not in the distance, but in the return. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, emotional closeness can trigger a deep internal alarm. It is not because the connection is unwanted, but because intimacy can awaken old fears buried in their nervous system. These fears may come from past rejection, childhood experiences, or moments when vulnerability led to pain. Over time, the mind learns a protective strategy. When closeness becomes intense, step back and create space. This moment of pulling away is not always a rejection of the person they care about. Often it is an unconscious attempt to regulate their emotional state. Their mind is trying to calm the storm of vulnerability that closeness creates inside them. But here is where the deeper truth reveals itself. If an avoidant truly does not value the connection, they rarely return. Their personality structure makes it easy for them to detach and move forward. When someone means very little to them, distance becomes permanent. They simply drift away and close the door. Yet, when an avoidant repeatedly comes back into your life, it tells a much deeper story about what is happening inside them. It means the emotional bond truly disappeared. Even when they step back, something within them continues to pull them toward you. The connection remains alive in their mind and heart. They may try to distract themselves with work, independence, or solitude, but the bond still lingers beneath the surface. Eventually, that pull becomes stronger than their instinct to avoid closeness, and so they return. Sometimes the return is subtle, a message, a conversation, a small gesture that reconnects the thread between you. Other times it appears after a longer silence, when they have processed their emotions and feel ready to step back into the connection. Each return carries meaning. It represents an internal conflict between fear and attachment. One part of them wants safety through distance. Another part wants closeness, familiarity, and the emotional comfort that comes from being connected to someone who matters. When they return, that second part is winning the battle. What makes this pattern significant is that it shows persistence of the emotional bond. Despite their natural defense mechanisms, despite their need for independence, they continue to gravitate toward the same person. And human beings rarely return repeatedly to something that holds no value for them. In fact, each return often strengthens the emotional imprint of the relationship. The mind begins to associate that person with stability, familiarity, and a sense of belonging that exists even when distance temporarily appears. This cycle of distance and return can be confusing for those who do not understand it. But when viewed through the lens of psychology and emotional protection, it becomes clear that returning again and again is not random behavior. It is evidence that the connection remains deeply rooted in their emotional world, even when their fears try to push them away. Many people have been conditioned to believe that low V must be loud to be real. They expect passionate declarations, dramatic gestures, constant verbal reassurance. In movies and stories, love is often portrayed as something explosive and expressive, something that fills the room with words and emotion. But real human behavior is far more complex than that. For someone with an avoidant personality, love often moves in a quieter direction. Their emotional world does not always feel safe enough to express affection in obvious or dramatic ways. Words may feel heavy, emotional conversations may feel overwhelming, yet this does not mean the love is absent. Instead, it finds different pathways to reveal itself. One of the most powerful ways this love appears is through small, consistent acts of care. These actions may not look extraordinary on the surface, but they carry deep meaning when you understand the psychology behind them. An avoidant person tends to guard their emotional energy very carefully. They are selective about where they invest their attention, time, and effort. If someone does not matter to them, they rarely go out of their way to provide support or help. But when someone holds a special place in their life, their care begins to appear in subtle ways. They might check if you arrived home safely. They might remember something important you mentioned weeks ago. They might help solve a problem you're facing without making a big announcement about it. They might quietly step in when you are stressed or overwhelmed. These actions may seem simple, yet they reveal a deep level of emotional awareness. Even if they struggle to verbalize affection, they are still paying attention to your needs. They are still observing what matters to you. And observation is a form of love. When someone remembers the small details of your life, it means they are mentally carrying pieces of your world with them. When they offer practice, cal support, it shows they care about your stability and well-being. When they protect your peace or try to ease your burdens, it reflects a quiet desire to contribute to your happiness. For avoidant individuals, action often feels safer than emotional expression. Actions allow them to care for someone without feeling overly exposed, gives them a way to show love while still maintaining a sense of emotional control. This is why their love may appear more practical than poetic. Instead of saying, "I care about you deeply," they may show up when you need help the most. Instead of speaking long emotional sentences, they may solve problems, offer advice, or provide stability in difficult moments. Their language of love becomes responsibility, reliability, and quiet protection. And when you step back and observe this pattern over time, you begin to realize something profound. These small acts are not random. They are deliberate choices to invest energy in someone else's life. Energy is one of the most valuable resources any human being possesses. People naturally give their time and effort to the things they value most. So when someone consistently uses their energy to support you, assist you, and stand beside you in practical ways, it reveals something deeper than words ever could. It shows that your well-being matters within their inner world, even if their love speaks in quiet actions rather than loud declarations. Trust is one of the most sacred currencies in human relationships. It is not given lightly, and for someone with an avoidant personality, it is often guarded even more carefully. Their emotional history may have taught them that vulnerability leads to disappointment, rejection, or loss of control. Over time, they learn to keep certain parts of themselves hidden from others. These hidden parts form what you might call their inner world. It contains their fears, their insecurities, the memories that shape them, and the doubts they rarely speak about. To most people, these layers remain invisible. They interact with the surface version of the avoidant person, the calm, independent, self-reliant exterior that seems strong and unaffected. But beneath that surface exists a much more sensitive emotional landscape. For an avoidant individual, revealing that inner world can feel incredibly risky. Opening up means lowering the defenses they built over many years. It means allowing enough for a person to see the areas where they feel uncertain or wounded. And for someone who has learned to protect themselves through distance, that kind of exposure can feel frightening. That is why when an avoidant begins to share personal fears, past experiences, or emotional struggles with someone, it carries tremendous meaning. It is not something they do casually. It is not something they do for everyone. Letting someone into their inner world requires a deep sense of safety. They must feel that the other person will not judge them, criticize them, or use their vulnerability against them. They need to believe that their honesty will be received with understanding rather than rejection. When that safety begins to exist, something powerful happens. The avoidant person slowly starts opening doors that were previously locked. At first, the sharing may be small. They might talk about a stressful experience from the past, or mention something that hurt them years ago. They may express a fear about relationships or admit a doubt about themselves that they rarely reveal. These moments might seem ordinary to someone who is naturally expressive, but for an avoidant person, they represent significant emotional movement. Each piece of vulnerability is like handing someone a key to a private room inside their heart. And every time they do this, they are taking a risk. And every time they do this, they are taking a risk. Because vulnerability removes the shield of emotional distance. It exposes their authentic thoughts and feelings to another human being. If the other person responds with patience and understanding, the trust grows stronger. If they respond with criticism or pressure, the avoidant person may quickly rebuild their walls. This is why their process of opening up is often gradual. They reveal pieces of themselves step by step, observing how the other person handles that trust. But when they continue to share deeper parts of their story over time, it becomes a powerful signal of emotional attachment. It shows that they feel safe enough to let someone witness their real self, not just the independent persona they present to the world. It means they value the relationship enough to allow another person into the private spaces of their emotional life. And when someone who usually protects their inner world begins to trust you with those hidden layers, it is one of the clearest signs that the connection has reached a depth that goes far beyond surface-level affection. When you truly study human behavior, you begin to notice something fascinating about the way people protect the things they value most. Every person has relationships that are temporary and others that feel essential. The difference often appears in how carefully they guard those connections. For someone with an avoidant personality, this protection can look different from what most people expect. They may not constantly talk about their emotions or openly express their fears of losing someone. Instead, their mind focuses on maintaining a certain level of independence and emotional balance. They try to avoid situations that make them feel overwhelmed or trapped. Yet when an avoidant person deeply values a relationship, another pattern quietly emerges beneath the surface. Even while they maintain their need for space, they become careful not to damage the bond permanently. This is a subtle but powerful behavior. You might notice that when conflicts arise, they may step back to regain their emotional control rather than escalating the situation. Instead of reacting with explosive words or actions that would completely break the relationship, they create distance until the emotional intensity settles. From the outside, that distance can sometimes look like indifference, but often it is actually a form of self-regulation. They understand, even if only subconsciously, that reacting impulsively could cause damage they cannot repair. So they pause, they retreat, they take space to calm their internal world. But the intention behind that space is not to destroy the connection. It is to protect it from emotional chaos. This protective instinct becomes even more noticeable over time. An avoidant person who cares deeply will usually avoid behaviors that would permanently close the door between you. They may not always know how to communicate perfectly, but they will often show restraint when it comes to actions that would completely end the bond. They might avoid saying cruel things in anger, They might stop an argument before it becomes too destructive. They might return later to reconnect after a period of distance. These behaviors reveal something important happening internally. Even if they struggle with closeness, they still recognize the value of the relationship. And when human beings recognize value, they naturally try to preserve it. For an avoidant individual, preservation often means maintaining the possibility of connection. They may need space to breathe emotionally, but they do not want to burn the bridge entirely. The presence of that bridge gives them comfort. It allows them to feel independent while still knowing that the relationship exists. Psychologically, this behavior reflects a deep attachment operating beneath their defensive patterns. Their mind may push them to withdraw, but another part of them quietly ensures that the connection remains intact. You might see this in small choices they make. They keep communication open. They maintain respect even during disagreement. They show awareness that certain actions could cause irreversible damage, and they deliberately avoid crossing those lines. These decisions are rarely dramatic, yet they carry powerful meaning. Because protecting GA relationship requires awareness, restraint, and emotional investment. It means someone understands that what they share with you holds significance in their life. And when a person who values independence still works to preserve the bond between you, it reveals that the connection has become something they do not want to lose. Human beings rarely change unless something truly matters to them. Growth requires effort, awareness, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths about ourselves. For many people, especially those who have spent years protecting their independence and emotional distance, this kind of inner work can feel extremely challenging. An avoidant person often builds their identity around self-reliance. They become comfortable handling life on their own terms, relying on logic, control, and personal space to maintain stability. Over time, this independence becomes more than just a preference. It becomes a shield that protects them from emotional vulnerability. Because of this, avoidant individuals usually do not feel motivated to change their patterns unless a relationship begins to hold deep significance in their life. When someone enters their world and the connection feels meaningful enough, something remarkable can begin to happen inside them. They start noticing their own behaviors in a different way. They begin recognizing moments when they pull away too quickly or create distance when emotions become intense. At first, this awareness may feel confusing. They might struggle internally between their natural instinct to maintain independence and the growing realization that their defensive habits could damage the relationship. That inner conflict is actually the beginning of growth. Instead of simply withdrawing and moving on, they begin asking deeper questions about themselves. Why do I feel uncomfortable when someone gets close? Why do I CTT this way during emotional conversations? Why do I feel the urge to step back when the relationship becomes meaningful? These questions signal that something within them is shifting. Self-reflection requires courage, especially for someone who has spent years avoiding emotional complexity. Yet when an avoidant person cares deeply about someone, they may slowly begin confronting the very fears they once avoided. You may notice them making small but meaningful efforts. They might try to communicate more openly about their feelings. They may work to stay present during difficult conversations instead of disappearing. They might begin learning about emotional patterns, attachment styles, or relationship dynamics in order to understand themselves better. Each of these steps represents personal growth driven by the importance of the connection. This process is rarely perfect or immediate. Growth often unfolds slowly, with moments of progress followed by moments of hesitation. But the willingness to keep trying is what truly matters. When someone begins challenging long-standing habits, they are stepping outside their comfort zone. They are questioning behaviors that once felt necessary for emotional survival, and people do not take that kind of risk unless something or someone has become deeply important to them. What makes this transformation powerful is that it reflects a shift in priorities. The avoidant individual begins to realize that maintaining the relationship matters more than maintaining complete emotional distance. That realization can inspire them to build new emotional skills. They may practice patience, develop better communication, or learn how to sit with vulnerability rather than escaping it. These efforts are not always visible in dramatic ways, but they represent a quiet revolution happening within their inner world. Because when someone begins growing, healing, and evolving in order to sustain a connection, it reveals that the relationship has become more than just a passing experience in their life. It has become a reason to face fears they once believed were safer to avoid. Thank you for taking the time to listen and open your mind to deeper understanding and growth. Goodbye for now, and may your journey be filled with wisdom, love, and powerful transformation.